In this video, we're going to show you how to install the power steering return hose on your Jeep Wrangler, located on the front side of the engine. We want to go ahead and drain the fluid out of our power steering reservoir here. We have a little retaining bucket right here. Twist open this cover, pull out the dipstick, set that aside. Now we're going to use an evacuation tool here, and we're going to start to pull this fluid out. We want to continue to do this until we can empty out the power steering pump. Once we've evacuated as much of the fluid as possible, go ahead and install your cap and lock that down. Remove the expansion tank. Use some pliers to loosen and slide the clamp down. Your particular model might be a screw clamp. You would use a flathead screwdriver to go ahead and loosen the clamp. Pull the hose off. Our expansion tank will literally just pop straight up. So you want to get an arm underneath it or a hand underneath it and pull straight up. You're going to dislodge the little retaining tabs here. Pull that up and set that aside. Now on the back side of the power steering pump, there is the return line right here. There's a clamp holding right here. We're going to use a pair of needle nose pliers. We're going to reach down. I want to go ahead and pinch that clamp and slide that down. Now I want to take that hose off. Now make sure you have a catch can or a bucket underneath to catch any residual fluid that will be in the hose. I'm going to use a screwdriver to gently get in here and work on that hose to push that down. Here we go. Now we do have power steering fluid coming out, but you have your catch can underneath. I'm going to tip this down into our drain bucket. Using a 19mm socket, go ahead and loosen and remove your lug nuts. Once you remove the lug nuts, remove the wheel and set it aside. And once you have the wheel off, you're going to go ahead and access the return line for the inside of the wheel well, and you can see the nut right inside there that attaches to the hard line. Now our splash shield here is torn, but you want to go ahead and kind of pull that aside, pull out the buttons that are holding it in place. And we're going to reach in there with our 19mm open-end wrench. And let's go ahead and break that free. Remove this cover using 10mm socket. Remove the 2 bolts on the passenger side. Once you have those 4 bolts out, lift up on that cover. Now with the cover off, you can actually reach down inside to the nut right here, and you can actually use your hand to assist you with a wrench to loosen this. So go ahead and continue to work on that and thread this completely out of the steering gearbox. Now it should get to a point where you can just get your fingers in there on the front and the back side of it and spin that nut out. You just use your wrench, pop that hose out of the box. Using a 16mm socket, we're going to go ahead and loosen and remove these bolts. These bolts hold the power steering pump. Now the power steering pump will move, but is still attached to the steering system. And I can simply grab that return line. Just kind of push that back. Here's your differential vent. We'll just slide that out of the way. And just pull that out any way you can. Now the reason we went ahead and loosened the return hose before we unbolted the steering box is that the bolts were stabilizing the power steering gearbox, so it would help us break that free. Otherwise the pump would be moving around. So that's why we did that first. Before installing the new hose, you want to make sure you take the supplied O-ring, slide that over the end. I'm going to put a little bit of power steering fluid on this seal right here. We just grabbed some of the power steering fluid from the steering box where the other line was. Let's go ahead and feed this up and thread it in. And just get that threaded in as far as you can by hand. Now we're going to use our wrench on this here just to bottom out the hard line. We're not going to tighten it. So make sure that once it is seated, just turn it. We want to make sure that this hose is still flexible. Now we put our jack underneath the pitman arm here. Go ahead and jack this up, push this into position. Now that we have all three of our power steering box bolts in, let's go ahead and snug all these down. Tighten down the 3 bolts for the gearbox. Torque down the gearbox bolts to 70 foot-pounds. Now that we have the box tightened down, remove your jack. Now that we have the power steering box tight, let's go ahead and tighten down this hose. Now you want to make sure that this is good and snug. Install the cover here for the sway bar. Install the bolts on the other side. Once we get all 4 bolts in, we can go ahead and snug them all down. Go ahead and bring back the fender liner and install your plastic push pins to retain that. Go ahead and install your wheel. Get our lug nuts threaded on here. Go ahead and torque down your lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. Remove the hose clamp from the old hose, and we're going to put this onto the new hose. Grab the hose, and we're going to slide our clamp down onto there. Now let's go ahead and install the hose on the back side of the pump. Go ahead and work the hose up and onto the pump. Go ahead and use your pliers and bring that clamp up and into position. Install your expansion tank. Make sure that these two upper and lower tabs here line up with the support on the radiator or the fan shroud here. Push it down in, install the hose, and then install your clamp. Go ahead and open up your power steering reservoir. Go ahead and wipe this down. The first thing you want to pay attention to is the certain levels here. We have a C for cold, an H for hot, and way down below it says add. So what we want to do is we want to pour some power steering fluid into this reservoir here until it gets to the C for the cold. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and use the recommended power steering fluid for this model application. Now, once you've added some fluid, what you want to do is add some and then check it. You don't want to overfill the system here. So install the cap, twist it down, pop it out, and take a look. It's not really reading on our dipstick there, so continue to add some fluid. And we're going to do this a few times to get to that cold mark. Now we're right on the cold mark there. That means when we start up the vehicle and it warms up, it should go to that hot mark there. It's something you want to check after you run the vehicle for about 20 minutes or so. Go ahead and double check that level and make sure that it is good. Install that cover and wipe down any drips, and you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.